Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. For those of you who have just joined us here at the historic dockyard, welcome aboard the Alley Can. My name's Dan, it's my pleasure to be your skipper for today. Crew downstairs, Fred and Wilma. If you have any worries, problems or concerns whilst you're going out at all, please don't hesitate. The flagship here is three masts called the Warrior. That is the right-hand side, the starboard side of our vessel. If you can face that way, it's going to be more comfortable for you, because for the first half of the harbour tour, everything you're going to look at is over that side. The Warrior was the first of our iron-hulled warships, built in 1859 on the River Lee, commissioned in 1860. She was built on an 18-inch thick vermetique frame that after they bolt iron plates onto. She was steam-powered as well as sailed, so in her day considered to be so formidable that nobody would dare go anywhere near her, she never even got to fire a shot in anger. She was the pride of Queen Victoria's fleet. She was the head of the Red Fleet back in the day when Britain had three fleets: red, white and blue. Thank you. Thanks very much. Now the Warrior was built by a company called the Thames Iron Works. They had their own little football team. Over the years this team becomes West Ham. This is why their nickname is the Hammers or the Irons, because of the Thames Iron Works. Please keep looking that way. Starboard side, remember? And as I come round the port, straight in front of us, on the jetty, the big red brick building with a stone tower is called Semaphore Tower, and it's home to our Queen's Harbour Masters. Now we call these guys QHM for short, and they have total control of every vessel's movement in and around the port, from the smallest workboats right up to the largest of the cross-channel ferries. Now they're always watching with radar and CCTV, and they have Ministry of Defence Police launches. Look, there's three of them in front of me now, and they patrol 24 hours a day. But this is South Railway jetty here, the start of HMS Nelson. Back in April of 1956, tied up here, side by side, with three Russian warships, and on board one of them was President Khrushchev. This is the last time a famous naval diver called Commander Buster Crab had been seen alive. Acting against the wishes of the then Prime Minister, MI6 ordered the diver to dive between the ships. He's never seen again. We accuse the Russians of foul play. They just accuse us of spying, but they always deny any involvement in his disappearance. The blue building here was the railway station that had been built for the Victorian rail network. It was troop trains, supply trains, the occasional oil train. Now finally, folks, after weeks and weeks, you've been here 3 weeks, time served early evening. She is one of the fast fleet tankers, fire fuel, ships and aircraft. Launched in 2016, commissioned 2019. 37,000 tons, 200 metres long, 28.6 metres wide, with a draft of 10 metres. She reaches speeds of 27 knots. The range, 18,200 nautical miles. That's impressive. 63 crew on board. Now normally, folks, we get a really good look at HMS Victory now, but the tide surge totally obscures the view, but not to worry. On the way back, when we come round that corner, we can look into the gap between the carrier. ships plus the operational range 10,000 miles. They always have 46 days of food on board. She costs just under £3.1 billion to build. Now, folks, just sat here on the north corner is one of two ships that are here in port. Now, if you look behind the spay, that's this one, you'll see a destroyer, and any moment now, on the right of that destroyer is another ship identical to the spay. Here she is, the ship to the right. Now that one's called the Tape. And both of these little ships are here in port having the final checks, because very soon it's supposed to be tomorrow. They're going to be permanently stationed in the Indo-Pacific. They won't come back. They will swap crew every 4 months. Now these are two of the Navy's 5 Batch 2 river-class patrol vessels. Now if you're wondering why these ships are painted totally different to any other ship in the Navy want them to stand out. They want you to be able to look at this ship and in a glance know it's a coastal patrol vessel. So they painted them in this World War I camouflage system known as Dazzle. There's Warship Duncan. Now we've got 6 of these destroyers. Duncan is the 6th one. And 3 of the Navy's destroyers, the 6 that are here in port today. We have the Duncan, the Dragon, and the Daring. And they are Daring class, type 45s, which end up costing £1 billion each, built in a so-called stealth cyclone. The role of the ship is all about the radar. It's a missile tracking system, the multi-functional SAMS radar. The ship is 152.4 metres long and weighs 7,350 tonnes. Crew complement 190. There is purpose-built sleeping quarters for an extra 45 people, as generally they will carry a detachment of Marine Commander's regiments. They're fast, over 34 knots. They have a fully automatic self-loading storage cannon. They carry 48 missiles in that silo. They have minigun, 13mm guns. If you look at the white pillboxes, these are radar-guided gantling guns called Vulture Flags. They fire 53 bullets per second through those barrels to shoot every distance. Warship Mersey came back into port sometime overnight or this morning. Now the Navy have got 3 of these Batch 1 river-class patrol vessels. The 2 behind us are Batch 2. Now we have the Mersey, the Tyne, and the 7. These 3 built around about the year 2000. Type 23s. Now the Lancaster was the last one to be commissioned patrols around the world, same level of success looking for the drug runners. Sea sector missiles, 32 of them. They can fire torpedoes out of either side of the ship. On the back of the ship you can land Wildcat or Burning helicopters. They can drop aerial torpedoes down the submarine. Over the far right there is HMS Warrior on the dry dock. She's going through East India too. Those huge sheds that say HM Naval Base Portsmouth used to be the site of BAE systems. Sadly, we don't build ships here anymore, but we do have the contract for the maintenance. The Diligence had been commandeered into the Navy to help the Falklands War. She was so useful they kept her and were still using it up to about 7 years ago, where she ends her life working, doing crew changes, mostly with submarines out at sea. For years she sat there up for sale. There's been very little, even no interest. It won't be long, they will sell her for scrap. Both over the last 12 weeks or so that I've been coming to the port 5 days a week, this cruise ship here, Scarlet Lady, has been in port about 12 times. It works out like she comes in today, she will load up with passengers, she disappears for 3 days and then comes back. And she's been doing this week after week. Now this is Virgin Voyages' first ship. It's their biggest ship, and I must admit it is very impressive. 277 metres long, 38 metres wide. It's an adult-only cruise ship. Now there's 13 passenger decks, but 17 decks in total. Well, passenger-wise, she can take 2,770. I mean, that is just unbelievable. With 1,160 rooms. This is the only way Bimini, the Bahamas, they call it the Beach Club. And there's 20 different drinking and dining establishments on board. They also have a multi-function theatre. The ship has its own body piercing and tattoo parlour too. Now at the moment it's staying in UK waters until October, then it goes to the Bahamas. But next spring she comes back and will be operating from here to ports around Europe. That'll be good. Now folks, every time she comes in, the crew are doing little jobs like this morning, well yesterday. You see the anchor, they touched up all the rust marks. Now today they've blacked the anchor. Any little rust stain or something, the crew are on it. Really doing a fantastic job, keeping the ship looking absolutely first rate. Very impressive. Over to the right then, an old destroyer, streaked in rust, waiting to be towed away for scrap. You're looking at the old Bristol. Do you notice it has 3 funnels? It had prototype Olympus gas turbines inside. The only Type 82 to be built in the 60s. She was Hong Kong guard ship for a little while. This old destroyer, the carriers during the Falklands War. For years, it sat over there being used as a training and then accommodation ship for thousands of cadets who over many, many years have passed through the big grey building back there called HMS outside the walls, once you have a keep, a square tower, you have a castle. It becomes Portchester Castle. 285 is the documented date that interests the historians. This is when Portsmouth Harbour had first become a naval base. Roman ships were defending the port. But as I'm talking to you, the tide's coming in. And if you look over to the right, you can see the last of the mudbanks slowly being covered over by the incoming tide. This morning, there were 16 miles of mudbanks exposed. In Napoleonic times, all of that mud used to stretch right over to the aircraft carrier, all the way back to the bridge sheds at the bottom of the water. All of this strip of water was dug out by hand of thousands of Napoleonic prisoners of war, and it took them years. Just to the right of us, you may have spotted 6 ammunition barges. They're jet black with a red stripe, and they're tied up alongside the cranes that are known as UHAF, UHAF. This means Upper Harbour Ammunition Facility. This is where they take warships so they can lift all the missiles, ammunition, torpedoes and the like out of the barges up onto the ships here, safely out of harm's way where it interferes with nobody else in the port. Way out into the middle of the channel. Now at the moment, folks, if you look straight in front of us, all the way across the other side of the channel, you see, covered in thick green bushes and trees, a little island here, and it's called Burrow Island, but it's still known to all the locals as Rat Island, because for a short time, this is where they were dumping the bodies of prisoners who had died whilst digging out the harbour, into a pit here to rot, until it is totally overrun with the black rats eating the corpses. The local people were terrified. They feared the return of the plague and commissioned the Navy to clean up the island. During the Second World War, hidden in amongst these bushes here, are homing pigeon logs. Some of these little pigeons carry messages back over the English Channel from France, working in particular for the SOE. Have a look over the port side into the gap between the aircraft carrier and the tanker, and you're looking out at HMS Victory, which will be coming into view literally any second now. There she is. Launched in 1765 at Chatham. This was a first-rate ship, which meant back in the day it was one of the finest fighting warships available anywhere. Now, every time you wanted to build a ship of this nature, you would have to cut down and destroy 100 acres of your best forest. Just to build this ship is 6,000 whole trees, 80% of which were oak. The ship became famous at the Battle of Redevelopment. This was where the British fleet take on the combined French and Spanish fleets. Now, even though they're outnumbered 3 ships to 1, the British still managed to take 63,000 of the enemy prisoner without even losing a ship. But any thought of a celebration is soon forgotten when victory signals Nelson's dead. They had kept this quiet because they knew the effect this would have had on morale. Before Nelson died, he asked his friends not to bury him at sea. He wanted to be taken back to England and buried peaceably. They had to pickle his body in a barrel of brandy to bring it home, because it's 3 months before they get back. When they do, they lift off the lid. It's actually done quite a decent job of reservation. The body is removed from the wreck and taken to London for the funeral. Now folks, back in those days, have you any idea how much a whole barrel of brandy costs? Because not going to waste one little drop of this, the officers and crew decide we shall have a little drink then, in honour of our fallen commander. It doesn't take much imagination to guess from where. They say on the day, all of the crew comment on its full-bodied flavour. Just over to the right of us, we're coming up to Cumbrian Fisher. She's 9 metres of ship under the water. She's full of NATO fuel for warships. They are pumping the fuel out of the Fisher along the pipeline on the top of the OMJ, the oil fuel jetty, to the huge storage tanks ashore. When she's empty, back up to Scotland she goes to get more. And she's been doing this year after year now. On the other side of the Fisher is Gosport Marine, home to millions of pounds worth of small leisure and pleasure clubs. And the section at the end that we are approaching now, Endeavour Quay, is a boat builder. And there's been a boat builder of one type or another over here, well, close to 200 years. Up until the 50s, a very famous boat building company called Camper and Nicholson were over here. Back in the 30s, for the America's Cup, they had designed and built the fantastic ocean-going J-class racing yachts, mostly owned by very wealthy Americans now, who choose to keep them in much sunnier climates. Spinnaker Tower over to the left of us, 170 metres or 560 foot tall. As it was being built for the millennium, the intention was to name it Millennium Tower. Only from day one of the tower's construction, there just seemed to be problem after problem, setback after setback. It's eventually completed in 2004. The estimated build cost of 6 to 8 million spirals to 34 million. On a very clear day, they say from the platforms, you can see 23 miles or more of continuous coastline from. To cross the harbour. As I turn to the left, come round to port, if you look to the harbour entrance, look at the fort right in front of us, and then you can see behind it, first of the lunchtime Brittany ferries. It's only got one funnel. This means it's the Normandy, and she's coming to the end of a 7-hour crossing from Port Wiesrud or Caen this morning. Now you can see Spitbank in the middle, Port Sands over to the left, No Man's Land over to the right by the Isle of Wight. They were all built as part of the Palmerston Follies, built out of 15-foot thick stone blocks, dropped onto the shallow shoals on the seabed. They've each got their own freshwater wells. Just here on the right is Spice Island, steeped in history. Over here, Sir Walter Raleigh lands the first tobacco, potatoes and spice plants when he comes back from the Americas in the late 1500s. And years later, they press gang hundreds of men and boys into the Navy from here. Quite a lot of these people don't come back. You had to have been really lucky to have got through what often have been described as 5 brutal years of service if you got the wrong type of captain. What do you think of the super yacht that's here in port today? Look, the Amaryllis, 78 metres long. She costs £100 million, owned by a very wealthy Russian. It is a charter vessel. If you and 13 of your friends would like to take over the Amaryllis for 5 nights, it's only £689,000. If you then want to go somewhere in it, add the price of the fuel you use on top of that too. Okay, this is the first stop. This is Gunwharf Quay. This is 92 shops, cafes, restaurants, bars, pubs, it's all here. If you are leaving here for lunch, could you please just make sure you've got all of your belongings and possessions? Now, once you get off the boat here now, you can't come back on board later. It is literally a 5-minute stroll from here back to the dockyard. Thanks ever so much for coming along with us this afternoon. We really hope you enjoyed the harbour tour. If you did and are so inclined, they do have a little thank you tin, which of course is optional. Take care stepping off. We'll be here about 7 or 8 minutes, then head back round to the dockyard. So if you just want to end up back at the dockyard, just stay on board the boat with us, please. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who have just joined us here at Gosport, welcome aboard the Alley Cat. It's been known as Gosport since the Napoleonic times. This is where all the ammunitions were stored. More recently, HMS Warrior, a naval unit that dealt with mines and torpedoes right up until 1987. By this time, nothing more than advances in technology, the Navy decided they no longer need the facility. They shut the site down. The property lay dormant until the 90s. With the approach of the millennium, they then decided it could all be sold on and redeveloped. They sell it to Molam Construction and Barclay Home Developers, who between them build all the waterside restaurants, bars, hotels, casinos, cinema, nightclubs, and they build the tower. In a moment, when we get a bit closer to the tower, try to look up underneath it, please. Up to its first floor. You're looking out for the glass floor. If you're going to go up there to admire the view, you are invited to kick off your shoes, walk across it, have a look down, 100 metres to the water below. Now I think the divers are finished here on the fast cat. They were working on the back of the airboat. She's probably picked up a rope or a fishing net or something. There are 2 of these fast catamarans, and between them they operate a service. From the railway station, just over here on the right, they pick up their passengers, take them across the Solent to Ryde Pier on the Isle of Wight, a 23-minute crossing. Now if you look in front of us, you can see the Normandy, the lunchtime Brittany ferry, and if you look just here, you can see the JEW. She's full of fuel. She's going to follow the Normandy down to the very bottom and top up, so she can head back to France in a few hours' time. We're now coming down towards the Warrior. Over the last 6 weeks or so, the painters have been all around the ship and they've done a fantastic job. Look at her, she looks absolutely first class. It's such those of you who just joined me a minute ago back at Gun Wharf, please don't get off and go anywhere. You haven't had your harbour tour. We're just calling in to the historic dockyard here to drop off the passengers who have. While we're here, we pick up a few more, then carry on with the harbour tour. If you are leaving here and now at the dockyard, once again, please make sure you've got all of your belongings and possessions and take care moving around the vessel.